Andrew Huberman, the neuroscientist podcaster, is one of those guys who loves to pretend he's totally unbiased and that he just follows the scientific evidence. But this clip reveals that he has one huge bias he just can't get past. You'll see when Andrew is presented with evidence he doesn't like, he tries to change the topic, minimize the research, and basically has a complete meltdown over plant protein. This conversation is also a fascinating case study on how fragile men can be when their traditional views about meat consumption are even slightly challenged. We're also going to talk about the Belcampo meat scandal, which was a scam company run by Andrew's ex-girlfriend, the science on plant versus animal protein, and more. Let's get into it.
I think of protein quality in terms of quality of protein, meaning the type and ratios of amino acids, the availability of those amino acids relative to the amount of calories one has to ingest to get them. Because frankly, I've grown tired and slightly irritated at these plant-based foods have a ton of quality protein in them. And I go, really? You have to consume 2,000 calories of that plant or grain in order to get the equivalent amino acid profile from, a 4-ounce piece of steak, for instance. Mm-hmm. And this is not an argument that animal proteins are better ethically. I'm just saying at a quality as a function of calories ingested, I feel like animal proteins are superior.
He's already off to a bad start, as this just isn't true. It's a perfect example of how these pro-meat types choose low-protein plants to make their biased comparisons.
If you choose to eat plant proteins, let's pick soy or chickpea, or my favorite is quinoa. That's 1,100 calories in 6 cups of quinoa at one time to stimulate your muscle. Go ahead.
A 4-ounce piece of steak has 2.5 grams of leucine and clocks in around 275 calories. Meanwhile, 150 grams of firm tofu also has 2.5 grams of leucine and less than 200 calories, fewer than steak. Why is Huberman, who acts like an expert in nutrition, not aware of tofu? Or is it possible he's ignoring it because it doesn't support his pro-meat bias?
Man, this is a lightning rod of a topic here. This
we have a strong audience. They can handle it.
They can handle it. All right, you guys, buckle up, brace yourselves, please.
It's funny that Huberman says his audience can handle this topic when he himself clearly cannot. This is Alan Aragon, and I don't know too much about him, but he did go on Simon Hill's podcast, which makes me think he's pretty open to plant-based diets. We'll get to some stuff he says that pisses me off, but I think his goal is to be evidence-based, which I appreciate.
Gram for gram. As a group, animal proteins are higher quality. They're more anabolic. They have a higher proportion of essential amino acids. They have a higher amount and proportion of the most anabolic driving amino acids, the branched chain amino acids, leucine specifically. And in the majority of the literature, when you compare animal versus plant proteins head to head, you see greater muscle protein synthesis. Now, with muscle protein synthesis being sort of the short-term indicator of what might indicate a growth trajectory over time, we have to see if we can corroborate that with these longitudinal trials where you drag the experiment out for weeks and months to see if there's any superiority with the animal versus the plant protein for kind of where the rubber meets the road, which is increasing muscle mass and or strength.
I actually like the way Alan phrased this because whenever you're trying to persuade someone, it's smart to corroborate the points they're making, otherwise they'll discount you entirely. It may sound like he's going to go pro-meat at this point, but he's just setting it up for a debunk and acknowledging that while animal protein may look better on paper, that doesn't necessarily matter because what we really need to look at is actual muscle growth.
There are 2 studies now that compared and this is what's been missing from the literature. Usually we take 2 groups of omnivores and we supplement them with, let's say, whey protein, and then we supplement the other group with some sort of a plant protein.
Like pea protein.
Yeah, pea protein. And interesting thing about pea protein, it actually outperformed whey in one study. So in this 2015 study where pea protein supplementation outperformed whey for increasing muscle thickness. It was really sad. I was really sad to see that because I was weighing it up and I was like, oh, God, yeah.
No,
what are we doing here?
Now he reveals his bias, saying that he was sad to see pea protein outperform whey. And this is where Huberman crosses his arms and says, it is what it is, which at least acknowledges reality, even though he seems sad about it. I'm not sure why anyone would be sad that protein that comes from exploiting cows did worse, but that's just me.
We finally have studies where we're looking at completely vegan regimen, a group who's totally vegan, no animal products at all in the diet, versus an omnivore group, and put them on a resistance training regimen, 12 weeks. This was done by Lorraine and colleagues. This was like a few years back. And so they optimized protein, or at least made it at the bottom of optimal, at 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight per day in both groups. Okay. And so, but the unique thing about this study, it was the first time ever we're comparing vegans with omnivores. So there were no significant differences between groups in muscle size and strength gains by the end of 12 weeks, where they were put on a progressive resistance training program.
It was isocaloric. So both groups.
Isocaloric.
Meaning, for those that don't know what that means, is total number of calories ingested per day, same in the vegan versus omnivore group.
Yes, that's right. Isocaloric, isomacronutritional, isoproteic, everything is equated between the groups macronutrition wise. No significant differences in the size and strength gains. And they're suspecting, and by the way, the vegan group, their protein intake was boosted up to 1.6 grams per kilo, or 0.7 grams per pound. It was boosted up by soy protein supplementation. So apparently, we're beginning to see that at a dose, a total daily protein at 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight, the totally vegan group was able to hang in there against the omnivore group for muscle size and strength gains, at least within the conditions of the study, and at least for those 12 weeks, and at least for the subjects that were used, who weren't necessarily, these high-level athletes.
We can see the ways they both try to discount this study, saying vegans can hang in there, and that these weren't high-level athletes, implying that trained people probably won't get these results.
So if you construct it properly, you can follow a vegan diet as long as you get 0.7 grams per pound of body weight.
And the weird thing, man, is the vegan diet overall had significantly less essential amino acid content and significantly less branched chain amino acid content. But apparently, the resistance training stimulus is robust enough to make protein effects almost secondary.
Alan says it's weird to get these results, and they don't even acknowledge the other benefits of plant protein, like higher fiber, more antioxidants, and lower saturated fat. There's this study that shows high fiber intake is associated with an increase in lean mass. And since meat doesn't have any fiber, I think that's a huge benefit of plant protein.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Getting right back to exercise probably being the major lever in everything. Oh, well, sleep, I would argue, is the major lever over time.
I would agree, man.
Yeah.
Now, Huberman doesn't like this plant protein discussion, so he tries to pivot to a topic he's more comfortable with, sleep. But Alan masterfully brings it back to plants.
I know you're gearing up to hit the next thing. I want to mention that this study I just talked about was not a one-off. A couple years later, Montine and colleagues did the same thing, but they used mycoprotein for the vegan group.
Mycoprotein.
It's a fungus-based protein.
I think it's revealing that Huberman asks what mycoprotein is, once again showing that he doesn't know much about plant protein at all. Alan tries to make a joke, but Huberman is too triggered to pick it up.
So you've seen that The Last of Us, where that fungus makes people anabolic?
I haven't seen that. That's what this is? It's based on this?
I'm doing a joke about a fictional show. Some of the audience will chuckle or just think I just busted the most terrible dad joke ever. But it's a fungus-based protein. Commercially, it's called corn, so Quorn.
Okay.
It's one of these weird types of products that is unfortunately expensive.
And of course, they can't mention a vegan product without calling it expensive. And it actually looks like a lot of corn has eggs, so I don't think a lot of it is vegan, but it's still cheaper than ground beef, especially this high quality ground beef that Huberman always talks about. So I think it's unfair to just categorize vegan diets as expensive when we know that they're actually cheaper overall than omnivore diets.
So the plant-based or the animal-free group, their protein intake was boosted with this mycoprotein. And then they were compared against omnivores with mixed protein sources. And by the end of the study, I believe it was a 12-week study, no significant differences in increases in muscle size and strength. And they, progressive resistance training regimen, once again, not necessarily highly trained people, but we basically saw the same thing. As long as total daily protein is where it needs to be, then apparently the animal-free group can hang with the omnivores, at least for the conditions of that study. So I always look at these things skeptically, but the mycoprotein also outperformed milk protein for muscle protein synthesis in this acute study that preceded this longitudinal study. And so there's some weird stuff that we can look at aside from animal protein that could be just as anabolic.
It's silly to call mushroom protein weird stuff, as selectively breeding animals, forcibly impregnating them, confining them in filth, and slaughtering them when they're infants is much weirder, but animal farmers have done a great job at convincing everyone this is totally normal behavior.
So yeah, that's the story with animal versus plant and or fungus-based protein. And so yeah, I just had to throw in the Montine.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I think when people hear soy, there's been this, kind of assault on soy for years, and I've avoided it, not for any specific reason, but because I prefer other sources of calories. I like meat and berries and eggs and this kind of thing. But it's interesting that some of these engineered proteins and soy protein and pea protein, when you really put them to the test under the right conditions, they seem to, gram for gram, they seem to perform just as well as the animal proteins. You did mention, however, that satiety rather, is a key factor. So I'd be curious in this study, I don't know if they measured this, whether the people in the vegan group felt that they were happy with what they were eating as compared to the animal protein group. At the end of the day, are they still craving more food? Do they feel like they desperately want a ribeye steak? In order to follow a fairly strict diet of any kind, but in particular plant-based, one has to have a good reason. I think that otherwise you just kind of fall into the availability issue. It's a lot easier to eat an omnivore diet.
Now Huberman acknowledges that engineered proteins can hang, and then falls back on, but do vegans even enjoy their food? Which shows that he can't comprehend how anyone could be happy without munching on corpses. Huberman also says being an omnivore is much easier, which is true, even though it's pretty easy to be vegan these days. But I wonder if he would hold that position when it comes to exercise or sleep. Obviously, it's easier to sit on the couch and stay up late, but I don't think Huberman would advocate for that just because it's easier.
And I always look at these things skeptically when you used essentially untrained subjects, because untrained subjects are always going to kind of incur this newbie gains effect for the training regimen, where the gains that you get from the resistance training alone are going to just mask any potential advantage of either protein type. And so, people Stu Phillips will argue with me on that all day long. We did a 2-day long Twitter argument about that.
You spend 2 days on an argument on X?
So Alan tries to discount this study because the subjects are untrained, basically saying newbie gains counteract what people are eating. And then Huberman, of course, has to keep Daddy Elon happy, so he corrects Alan's use of the word Twitter.
We just need more research on highly resistance trained subjects to see whether, in fact, a completely plant-based protein regimen that's optimized calorically and total daily protein amount-wise can really run with the animal-based stuff, like the high-quality animal-based proteins. And so it almost depends on where you want to place your bets and where you want to take your risks. So if gold is on the line, if first place at a professional or national level is on the line, I don't know if I would.
Alan says that if he were competing at a high level, he probably wouldn't trust plant protein. But there are plenty of vegan Olympic athletes who have won gold, like Vivian Kong, Novak Djokovic, and Diana Taurasi. They seem to be doing just fine.
But everybody's ideology is what it is, and some people are just kind of governed by what they want to stick to.
Mhm.
So it really depends on the population and what the goal is.
Alan concludes this conversation acknowledging that it's a personal choice, which it absolutely is, but I think the choice of the animal should be a factor, as well as the mass environmental destruction that animal farming causes. Now I want to talk about the Belcampo meat scandal, which was a meat company founded by Huberman's ex-girlfriend, Anya Fernald.
The way that we do things at Belcampo is pretty different in every aspect from conventional farming and ranching.
We feel it's really important to raise animals in outdoor conditions.
She built Belcampo around the idea of selling ethical meat, like grass-fed and regenerative, but an employee revealed that Belcampo was actually buying factory-farmed meat, repackaging it, and selling it at a huge markup. I apologize to all the customers that I lied to for the past 2.5 years in order to keep my job. I had to hold on to it for health insurance reasons as I was recovering from an injury. The meat at Belcampo Meat Co. is not local anymore. It is ordered from West Coast Prime and Rocker Brothers. It is not organic. It is not grass-fed. They are lying to your face and charging $47.99 per pound for filet that is either USDA choice and corn-fed or from a foreign country. They do not care about your health. They care about money. Thought this video would open some eyes and hopefully turn some people away from the scum that Belcampo is. The employee also revealed that their chicken came from Mary's, which is a Whole Foods supplier that's been exposed for saying that their chickens are pasture-raised while actually trapping them in factory farms. The employee said that they're told to hide these labels upon delivery, and the whole thing is a fucking lie. Huberman promoted Belcampo on his podcast, and I have a hard time believing that he didn't know it was a scam considering he was dating Anya while all this was going on. So when you put all this together, the pattern is obvious. Every time the science shows plant protein holds up, Huberman squirms, pivots, or waves it away. He'll hype ribeye, forget about tofu, and ignore the actual evidence in favor of his animal-based worldview, while acting like an unbiased professional. The truth is that plant protein is just as good for building muscle and has other nutritional benefits like higher fiber, antioxidants, and lower saturated fat. But Huberman will never acknowledge that because he's terrified of living a life that doesn't include animal exploitation. Thanks for watching, and if you want to support my work, please donate to Pro Animal Future today. We're tackling factory farming at the systemic level to create a better world for animals, the environment, and our health.